On the western flank of Montreal's central plateau, the area known as Notre Dame de Grace, with its adjacent slopes and avenues rolling toward Côte Neiges, grew from rural hinterland into a textured urban quarter whose identity has been shaped by waves of settlement, transit investment, and local civic life. The story begins in the 19th century, when the land was largely agricultural and dotted with country estates. What would become Monkland Avenue took shape as a connector road running past farms and small hamlets. Early maps and land grants show a landscape of fields and ridges, with families linked to Montreal by rudimentary roads and the occasional stagecoach. Yet the arrival of the streetcar and the railway in the late 1800s began to remap this quiet terrain. Streetcar lines drew new streets, subdivided lots, and made daily commuting possible, transforming NDG from rural hinterland into a preferred residential alternative for middle-class families seeking air, gardens, and proximity to the city. At the turn of the 20th century, small enclaves gathered around churches, schools, and commercial strips. Parish life anchored the community both spiritually and institutionally. Notre Dame de Grace parish formed a civic spine, and religious institutions helped define neighborhood rhythms. The built environment that emerged, modest single-family homes, duplexes, and low apartment blocks, reflected both the aspirations and constraints of a growing urban population. Brick and wood facades, narrow front yards, and plane trees along quiet streets became part of the local vernacular. Monkland Avenue gradually evolved into more than a thoroughfare. By the interwar decades, it had become a lively commercial artery. Grocers, tailors, cafes, and small workshops clustered together, serving the daily needs of residents. The avenue's shops were often family enterprises passed down across generations, and they stitched together a social fabric in which shopkeepers knew names and customers exchanged news between errands. This small-scale commerce gave the avenue a durable human scale, a place where public life and private life met. Further north, Côte Neiges developed along different but complementary lines. Its higher elevation attracted institutions, and institutions attracted people. Cemeteries, religious seminaries, and hospitals took root on the slopes. St. Joseph's and other religious foundations established schools and hospitals that later anchored neighborhood identity. The presence of these institutions, together with varying housing stock, from single houses to larger apartment blocks, gave the area a layered social composition. Longtime residents lived alongside newcomers, students, and health professionals, and across the 20th century, waves of immigrants bringing new languages and customs. Post-war dynamics accelerated change. The automobile, suburbanization, and municipal planning initiatives reshaped many Montreal neighborhoods, and NDG and Côte Neiges were no exception. New housing blocks rose to accommodate population growth. Commercial strips adapted to changing tastes and economic patterns. Yet despite pressure to modernize, much of the earlier human scale persisted, in part because of strong local associations and civic groups that resisted wholesale redevelopment and advocated for parks, schools, and community services. Grassroots activism kept certain corners of the district anchored to their residential and community uses. Immigration has been one of the most visible and defining currents in more recent decades. Successive waves of arrivals, first from other parts of Canada and Europe, later from the Caribbean, Latin America, Asia, and Africa, have layered NDG and Côte Neiges with multilingual and multicultural life. This diversity is audible in languages spilling out of cafes, visible in shop fronts and restaurants offering a non-Anglophone or non-Francophone culinary repertoire, and evident in the trees of small cultural institutions that now populate community centers, libraries, and places of worship. The schools and parks of the neighborhood became places of linguistic and cultural exchange. The social mix of residents created a robust civic ecology of associations, neighborhood centers, and volunteer initiatives. Monkland Avenue's recent revival illustrates how history and contemporary reinvention can coexist. Once a modest strip of essential shops, Monkland transformed across the late 20th and early 21st century into a stretch known for independent cafes, bakeries, and boutique retailers. The avenue attracted artisans, restaurateurs, and entrepreneurs who found value in its human scale and neighborhood clientele. Yet this renaissance was not merely the product of trendy openings. It built on decades of community continuity, family businesses adapting, and a street-level public life that made the avenue vivid. Côte, meanwhile, retained and amplified its institutional character. Hospitals and educational establishments continued to be major employers and anchors, while the adjacent residential streets preserved a dense, walkable quality. The neighborhood's elevated position provides a distinct sense of place. From certain streets, the city's skyline is glimpsed across a patchwork of roofs and trees, a reminder of NDG's proximity to Montreal's urban heart while maintaining its own domestic scale. Physical traces of the past remain scattered through the streets: elegant old houses with carved woodwork, groupings of second-floor bay windows, corner storefronts that once hosted cobblers and dairies. Parks and community centers are living legacies of earlier municipal investments in public amenities. Even as new developments appear, a careful walk along residential lanes reveals layers, foundation stones, names on church facades, and the slow patina of tree trunks that grew as the neighborhood matured. Contemporary NDG and Côte are not museum pieces. They are neighborhoods in motion, continuously shaped by demographic shifts, economic changes, and civic imagination. In recent decades, there have been debates familiar to many cities: pressure for densification, tensions around rising property values, and conversations about how to balance heritage with contemporary needs. Those debates are, in a sense, an extension of the neighborhood's long story, a conversation about what kind of community to be and how to make room for tomorrow while retaining the threads of yesterday. If there is a through line in the neighborhood's history, it is resilience seasoned by community ties. From farmland to streetcar suburb, from parish-centered village to multilingual urban quarter, Notre Dame de Grace and the slopes of Côte evolved by layering lives and institutions across time. The result is a place where domestic routines and public life meet on avenues and side streets, where the hum of cafes and the quiet of tree-lined blocks coexist, where memory and reinvention continue to animate a distinct Montreal neighborhood.
I hope you've enjoyed this video. This channel has more videos of Montreal in the Montreal playlist, which is linked in the description below the video. The channel also has more videos of my adventures bicycling through Latin America, Southeast Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, and I have playlists for all those countries that I've traveled through, available on this same channel, Hum of the Earth. So for more videos of Montreal and other cool places around the world, you can subscribe to the channel by clicking on the red subscribe button and clicking on the bell to be notified when new videos come out. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.